Hey,
Hello there.
how are ya?
It's a little toasty today, but I'll
Is
live.
it- Hey, I just want to double check. What's your screen like? Do you see the presentation?
I do.
Is it
I
a
see
good size?
you.
I can't, I thought there was a share my full screen or something, but I don't see the button anymore.
I think it's the if you look at the top right, it's just under your picture. There's like the settings thing right next to it. There should be a enter full screen.
There we go. Better.
Does it? Okay. All right. Cool. Woohoo!
And then you just see me on the little window, right?
Yes, I see
Okay.
you, and I see someone named Kim.
I see. I, uh, I, today I feel like when I'm looking at the camera, all I see is my double chin. So like, I want to be camera off, but I know I shouldn't.
Life is hard.
To myself. I
My
think,
dogs are staring at me like, "What are you doing?"
yeah, I think Tristan's coming down with a little cough and he wanted to stay home, but I'm forcing him to go to school
Oh
today.
no.
But he shouldn't, but
Yeah, I was just talking about that with my granddaughter, about the need to go to school every day. And she was like, "But I was sick." And I'm like, "You weren't sick that many times.
yeah,
Trust me, sister, you
the
weren't."
balance between like, trying to remember the lessons we learned about through COVID and staying home and all of that, but at the same time, it's just a little cough. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, at least it's not that lettuce diarrhea thing.
oh, I was gonna, yeah, like I don't know anybody that's had it, but uh, I saw on TikTok or something this morning. There was about 7,000 people really sick who had it. So
Really? Oh man.
up to a month. You know, though, if I did get it, I might not have my double chin anymore. So there could be a benefit to it.
That's true. That's true, right? Man. Yeah, I know. I remember during COVID because if you had on sunglasses and your mask and a ball cap, then you could go without worrying about makeup in your hair for like a year, right? Because it's like no one's gonna see me anyway.
What crazy times that was.
Yeah, very crazy. But yeah, I know a few people that have gotten it. So yeah, they're not
The,
having a good time with it.
oh, I don't even know how to say it, the diarrhea, the explosive diarrhea.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody that I know posted something yesterday. This said something along the lines of, "I partied in college drinking Harry Buffalo drinks out of a bathtub. There's no way this lettuce diarrhea is going to take me out."
It's funny. Steve is the most disciplined man I know, and he also is just a creature of habit.
Yeah.
I laugh when it comes to food because he can eat. He's a very, very picky eater, and he can also just eat the same thing every day and never complain. And every day, years and years and years, his lunch is a bag of salad from one of those pre-made salads. Uh, so I was like,
Oh
you
yeah.
better
Does
be
he do
careful
that? Oh
every
man.
day.
That's one thing that I gave up. I heard somebody, I don't know if it was online or a lecture that I attended, one of those, and they were talking about the 10 things you should never eat again in your entire life. And there were things like, there were some seafood things like lobster and like anything shellfish that like scavenges
Yeah,
and certain fishes and things like that. But bagged lettuce was the number one thing from all three of the experts that were on this panel because they
really.
said they said it's not just that it's got so much surface area to catch bad things, but it's also that they chop it up and it's like a mixture of where did that lettuce come from, right? So if you get it from multiple farms, then it's very hard to find out where it came from, and that's basically what's happening here.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Early in my career, I did some recruiting for Del Monte, and I was helping recruit the men and women who cut all the vegetables, and when you buy your they cut the pineapples, just big. trucks come in on the dock and drop it off, and they're prepping it for grocery. And it was not the cleanest place in the world, I have to tell you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
those poor people that work in, like, it's cold, it's a refrigerated environment, it's wet,
Oh,
the floors are wet, lots of like workman's comp stuff, lots of falls and cuts and things like that. But that was a miserable job. It made me question humanity a little bit, because
really?
there was just uh, despair in everybody's eyes that they were working at
Oh,
very low pay.
man. And you had to do recruiting for that? How did you talk them into it?
So no, at the time I worked for a staffing company, and I managed national accounts. So I would go implement them, get them up and running, and then hire the recruiters that did it. But it was that did the recruiting for those people.
Oh, okay. So you were like one step removed from the
Yeah,
actual.
yeah. I'd spend a couple weeks there at a time, making sure I understood the operation. But
Oh, man.
you learn a
Yeah,
lot.
I most of my friends that have worked like at a restaurant, they always say like after I worked there, I would never eat there. It's almost all the time.
Yeah. You know what keeps coming up in my feed for whatever reasons lately is just how almost every restaurant out there, or a big portion of them, are just supplied by Cisco, right? That food company, and we're just
Mhm.
eating reheated food. No matter what restaurant you go, you're just eating reheated food from one place to another, right?
Oh,
From one restaurant, unless it's farm to table, or something like that. But
yeah,
just you think about the supply chain and how much of our food comes from one place. So.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of stuff you don't want to know, and it's so many documentaries, and yet we still keep doing it. You know, it's
That is
like you think like, what
just
about somebody's going like, let's give them like explosive diarrhea. They won't know where they got it. We'll give them like a 2 week lead time, so they won't even know it's coming. And then we're like, we'll be fine. We'll get back to it. We'll get back to our Taco Bell menu in just like a week when it's gone.
that doesn't affect me. I could never eat Taco Bell for the rest of my life, and I actually don't enjoy fast food that much. I mean, I like to eat, honestly, but I don't enjoy fast food that much. So
Yeah,
keeping a drive-through is not hard for me.
yeah, yeah.
Hello, everyone. What time is it? Oh, it's almost
It's
time. Give it a few more.
almost time. Now we've got Kim over here. It looks like we're in some sort of um, what do they call
Stay.
that interrogation thing where they put the light on you.
It's always interesting to see how many people show up. I think we had like 75 people sign up. Um, so we'll, we'll make it great. There'll just be lots of opportunities for questions and to dig in.
Good.
Oh, or maybe am I supposed to be letting people in? Or
Yeah, probably. Just the fun people. Only fun. Hey, there's Cheryl. She's fun. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Cheryl.
Sorry, I don't use Microsoft
Oh,
Teams
there
a
you go.
lot, so I was like, I'm a Mac person. I'm like, oh my God, it's on Teams. Oh my God, panic. Just kidding.
Same.
can I
That was
tell
me.
you?
And I was like, oh wait, that was from the one
I'm
where we
like,
did the.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I was trying to be a little fashionably late, but then I had technical issues. I'm like, Jesus. How are you, Beth? Good?
I'm good. How are you? Is that
I'm well.
background
I'm
like current?
well, it's
Oh, I
not
see it
real.
now a little better.
It's either
Oh,
that or
nice.
my cabinet behind me. So I don't know. I was like, oh, this looks fun. I don't know.
It does.
Oh.
Looks like we need to go on a trip.
Yeah. So wait, yeah, we'll pretend. Yep, that's my back alley. Yeah.
That's right.
And
Hey,
this is soda water, not vodka, just so you know.
Oh, well, mine is tequila for sure. How about you, Brian?
Oh, I well, tequila's even better. It's my favorite.
I am not a flavored soda water person myself. Sarah, I tell you, I feel the pain with teams. Like it was really hard to kind of get the bookings and everything set up. It like took way more sweat equity than I would have liked it to. You know what kills me is uh, in this world that we live in with like driverless cars and AI and all of that stuff, Microsoft just can't seem to find a way to let me find like the last email. It drives me nuts. I'm like, what is the thing? All right, how we doing it? I think we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all for coming. I'm Brian, by the way. Appreciate you being here. Uh, like we said when we set up, this is going to be Beth's Roadshow, or Best Show. It's going to be an informative, research-based discussion. That said, I'll just give you a tiny little. BarkPass is a SaaS-based program that helps municipalities across the country modernize both pet licensing and dog park management. Okay. We were started in 2019 by our founders, Josh and Bree Larson. I'm going to tell you the origin story because it's just adorable. Josh and Bree are a husband and wife couple who are software developers who live in Waukee, Iowa. So they had been working for Shopify for years, and Waukee opened up a local dog park that required permits, and they went to register their dog, and it was a big old pain in the rear end. And I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, but they went knocking on the door to the Parks and Rec department and said, "Let us fix it for you." And they did, and that was the first instance of BarkPass. And then we just grew really quickly and organically throughout the Iowa community, and then now we're nationwide. Um, I lose track of time in my old age. 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, Steve and I purchased BarkPass. Steve is a 25-year pet tech veteran. If any of you are familiar with the animal shelter space, he's the original inventor of PetPoint, which about 60% of the animal shelters throughout the United States use. So if you ever have any sheltering management software questions, anything like that, he's your man. Today, he's the visionary who has created our strategic partnership with Animals First, with unified the pet services community. So everybody from the animal welfare leaders who are working in the shelters to the city leaders, the municipality leaders who oversee pet licensing, and the parks and rec teams who typically oversee the dog park. So our goal, if you will, is to give visibility across all organizations so everybody can see what's going on with pet services, pet related revenue, all of that good stuff. Steve's BHAG, if you will, is only about 60% of animals in the United States are licensed right now, which means there are roughly $425 million of revenue that is going untapped that could be funneled to either the city or to animal shelters for life-saving activities. So, like I said, Steve leads our shelter management and our pet licensing. He's the brains behind the operation. I lead our dog park management vertical. So I like to consider myself being on the front lines with our dog park customers, with Parks and Rec, um, helping to create self-sustaining dog parks that are going to last years and years. And kind of why it's important to me is like many people throughout my life, I have suffered from depression and anxiety. And what has always gotten me through it is just a sense of community. And I think dog parks are a third place, if you will, and a third place, that place outside of home and outside of work where you can go find common ground with your neighbors and everyone in your community, which is desperately needed because we know that America is definitely being affected by a loneliness epidemic. So that's kind of why we do what we do. When we first started BarkPass, I was doing research and I came across Beth. And I followed her, I studied her, I learned from her, and today I'm really fortunate to count her as a friend. So if, hold on, let me get some people in. So she's our presenter today. She's the founder of Wagtown. She's one of the country's leading voices on dog-friendly communities. She's an author of an AKC award-winning book, Tucker Finds His Forever Home, or Tucker Finds His Home, right? She's a National Parks and Rec Award winner um, for her dog park-friendly curriculum. So to achieve this, she has conducted over 1,000 interviews with professionals, municipal leaders, public safety leaders, in communities throughout the United States. So today, what she's going to do, she's going to walk us through what you see here, the Learn As You Go liability. We're going to talk a lot about accountability and streamlining operations for the community, public engagement, and all of that good stuff. I am not a public speaker, so thank you for letting me battle my way through that. Beth, it's all you, my friend.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the kind words. And I'm like kind of exhausted just listening to all the stuff that you said I've done. So I feel like I need to take a break. But thank you especially for the part about saying that you're my friend. One of the things that I love about the whole 1,000 interview thing is that it was actually in San Diego when I started to realize that when you say this is like the perfect dog park, and they're like, oh, this would be the cookie cutter. This is because that's my approach that I had in the very beginning, right? It was like, let's go find out what's the absolute best and tell people if you do this and the fence is this high and use this substrate and this covering and have this kind of shade and this kind of water management and all these things, that's the way to do it. That was, the approach that I had in my head. But I didn't want to write anything down on paper. I wanted it to be, let's go see first, right? I didn't want to have any foregone conclusions. And I was way wrong, right? I think that there are some things that should be a hard and fast rule. But one of the things that I discovered, which I think is kind of wonderful, is it depends. And I know we all hate to hear that, but it does depend. You have to take a look at the culture of the community, what the economic situation is there, what their relationship is with Parks and Rec, with city management, with any kind of facilities and operations in general, how they feel about technology, how they feel about the human animal bond. That is so different in every community that I've gone to that it makes it almost laughable that you could say that's the way to do it. And so I appreciate the standards that people put out there and, that if you follow this list, then everyone will be safe. But I've never found that to be the case. So one of the things that I would love to have happen, because you probably know better than I do, Brian, in terms of who's here, but I would love for people to either raise their hands or speak up, because I love to hear about what it's like at your dog park, like the dog park, whether you use it or not. There's probably a dog park in your community. You either use it, you're near it, you hear about it, you see the Facebook posts, whatever it is. They are so different. And I think that's great. But it also makes it nearly impossible to create something that can be flexible, that can work with the technology, can work with the various budgets that are in play. And unfortunately, a lot of times we'll see that people will expect certain things from a dog park experience or some kind of off-leash area experience and want that to be transferable. But when you give them all these like examples of here's what's possible, there's never really a conversation about, but would it be good for you, right? So I think that's a big misnomer, is this idea of having a set kit of parts that you need to have this wonderful experience. So when you take a look at like this framework stuff, yes, but, right? Like when we talk about the signage, you can put up all the signs that you want, but I've worked in, the ad agency space. I've worked in parks and recreation on the governmental side, for profit, nonprofit. And when you look at things like that, there are so many intricacies, even community level, even like an ordinance or an HOA, right? So the smaller you go, the more complicated it can become, and a lot of rules that you didn't know about, kind of thing. And then when you add on top of that the expectations, things you saw on TV, something that someone told you, hearsay, all of those factors come into play. So even if you have enter at your own risk, even if you have please leash your dog before you exit the space, even if you have please check the gate before you go, all of those things, those are suggestions. But I think we all know that we are oversigned, at least in the States. You can go to an intersection in your town. This is kind of an interesting thing you can do. And it gives you context for your dog parks is when you're driving there, when you stop at an intersection, count how many signs there are, because there'll be things about merging, turning right on red, which lane is which, the speed limit, some sort of site or milestone or area that you can go visit. All of those, whether it be directional or legal stuff, all of that stuff is so much noise that we've become almost immune to signage, right? We look at it and we're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you add in the fact that when you have an incident, right? If that incident happens as a result of lack of communication or lack of planning, then what happens when the incident happens is there's a breakdown, and enough of those breakdowns within the Parks and Rec agency, then you start to have an aversion of, I don't want to be in charge of the dog park, right? We have signs up, people are doing their thing, but I don't want it to be under my authority as a person in Parks and Rec or from the city or from whatever the group is that's monitoring that, because of the fact that, and I'm sure if the people on this call are in here, if you own a dog, you're probably a very passionate person about that dog, and you have very firm opinions about what you think is good for dogs and bad for dogs, what you think is safe for dogs, what you think is enriching. Um,
I'm,
then
oh,
translate that into whether it's accountable. What's that?
I'm sorry, Beth. I love what you said, especially around the uniqueness of every dog park. Because like you said, every community is different. So here at BarkPass, we have clients that are municipalities, right? The municipal run dog park.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We also have the private dog parks, or what I call bark parks, right? The for-profit operation. There's a lot of programming around it, and we also have some of those HOA customers, like you said. I think one place where they all kind of unify is around whatever that city ordinance is, right? So ultimately, whether you're a bark park or an HOA, you absolutely have to follow that. Uh, the city ordinance guideline.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you can imagine when you move to a new town, right? Or even if you go to a different part of your neighborhood, when those things become agile, it requires that the team understands what that is. But when you have it, like there's a park that I helped open not too far from me several years ago, and everything was great. They were doing, the sort of the more contained system of permitting people and having like a membership for that, even though it was, zero to no cost or low cost, it was still a little bit of a gate, right? To be able to get in. No, not physically a gate, but there was a barrier to entry, right? Even if it's super small, some people are like, well, it's just a little bit of money, and so it's not that big a deal. But usually the one saying that is the person who has the money that they could do it anyway, right? So you are kind of restricting things. But when you think about the amenities that are available in a community, for the most part, there's going to be a haves and haves not situation, because that's just how our communities are. Some people have these resources, and when you stop thinking about it as just money, then you can say, okay, this is something we need to plan for. We need to understand that some people are going to be coming that have resources for training, for better food for their dogs, for better veterinary care, for better understanding of their psyche when they're in that scenario. And so a lot of times people will say, well, we want to do this, let's put it out there. So at that dog park, the whole operation was put under someone because they liked dogs, not because they had gone through training, not because they had, tech background and they could understand how to work the platforms. None of that. It was a dog person. And that, it just seems like a ridiculous reason to put somebody in charge. But when I did some research and I talked with a lot of people who were in charge of the build and the process and the procedures and all the operations, it was amazing to me that, this huge 67%, it's like no formal training whatsoever. And you're talking about an area that we can all admit, right? It's probably there are going to be some instances of not great conversations. There could be some bites. There could be disease in the grass. There could be disease in the substrate. There could be widow hangers with the trees that are not being maintained correctly. And just being able to go in and say, can you at least read dog body language? Could I give you 10 things to watch for when you're in a dog park, just to keep that person safe, let alone everyone that's coming there? But we really don't have that, because I think we think that we know our dog, right? Like I know when they're getting nervous kind of thing. But how to read other people's dogs. It's not super complicated, but if you don't really do a dive into that. So I was really kind of shocked to see that was
Beth,
sort of go
if
ahead and
I
do it.
Beth, if I may, you know what I think is interesting here is, dog parks are the fastest growing amenity for city parks, right? It's all dog parks and pickleball. That's what everybody wants and what everybody wants
Yeah.
to get. And I think a lot of well-meaning Parks and Recs teams, a lot of well-meaning like friends of associations, gather the funds, build a dog park, and they think it might be just a fence and picking up the poop, right? And they don't understand the maintenance, the risk, the liability, and all of that stuff. But the bigger problem is honestly a lot of budget cuts too. So a lot of Parks and Rec teams, a lot of municipalities in 2026 are operating under budgets like they did in 1980, 1990, and that's not an exaggeration at all. So when they open up a dog park, to your point, it might be that administrative assistant, that clerk, that recreation program person who is responsible for managing the dog park. And like you said, Beth, very, very little training. And sometimes when it comes to incident management, um, again, not exaggerating, they just might have a clipboard, right? And they log what's going on, and if there's a fight, and then what happens is everybody gets on Facebook and their whatever social media there's on, and then it becomes a perception problem. So that's why within BarkPass we built an incident management module to digitize the record. So if there is a bite or an incident, whether it's a problematic dog or, we have to remember sometimes the problematic ones aren't necessarily the dogs, it's the owner, right? So
What?
so
That can't be
we
true.
do have that built in the platform to digitize the system to help improve risk management, excuse me. But again, go ahead, sorry, Beth.
I specifically, I like that a lot about Bark Pass because at that event where we opened that park, everything was going very well. Everybody had to have a permit to be, you had to have your little clip on your dog that's like, let us know, yeah, you're a member, you can come in here kind of thing. But for opening day, the decision was made to let's just not have it be any kind of barrier. Anyone can come in with your dog. Just let them try it out. Maybe they'll want to join thing, right? So everything was going really well. The dogs go in, and we had this photographer there, and we had these amazing photos of the dogs that are running around. And dogs always have this look about them and this demeanor when they're in an off-leash play space where they're sort of like, for me? Like, are you kidding me? And they just have this delight, right? Which, interpret that what you will. But at the same time, right at the last minute, this one couple came in with a pair of dogs that were not altered, and it's not having an unaltered in the dog park in the a dog in the dog park is not just about unexplained or unexpected puppies coming out. It's also that all the dogs know who's snipped and who's not. They know, right? So this dog comes in, and within a couple of minutes, it's like there's a bite, there's blood, and they did everything right. But then I saw the people that had that dog just slowly walking away, kind of like, oh, whoops, we should probably take off, right? And no one was saying anything. And I'm like, you can't just let them leave, right? But if you look at any Facebook page for a dog park, you're going to see stuff in there of people complaining about each other, calling each other out, talking about how awesome their dog and how bad everybody else's is, or the opposite. So, who would want to go up to that mindset of like, don't you come at me about my dog, right? They're perfect. It's your problem, right? So, there's naturally some hesitance about doing that. But when it's automated like yours is, I like the fact that it takes away sort of that discernment of this was a good dog, this was a bad dog, this is a good owner, this is a bad owner. The facts are there, right? Because the technology speaks for you a little bit. So it makes a little more savory.
I'll tell you, access control is the number one question that we get. That's what usually kind of like leads us into a relationship with a dog park.
Yeah.
We want to know the options about gates and managing who is in and out of the park electronically. That's the number one question we get.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if
I don't
anybody
doubt it
has
because it is
information
a
on
very sliding
that,
scale. What's that?
oh, I'm sorry. If anybody wants information, ping me and I can send you what we know. happy to just be a knowledge.
Yeah, at the very least, take a look at it. In my opinion, there's, we talked about signs a little bit. We talked about sort of that kind of build it as you go kind of thing. I remember there was somebody that reached out to me a few years ago and they were like, hey, we're thinking about putting in a dog park at this senior facility that's like a whole campus. It's absolutely beautiful. And they had a few residents that were constantly asking for a dog park. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I can help you with that. I'm familiar kind of with the space. Why don't you send me a Google Earth drop and I'll take a look at the space and I can give you some, just off the cuff remarks on what I think about what your process is here. And she goes, well, we're not sure where we're going to put it, but we did buy the fence.
Funny.
And I know, it's like, how did you buy the fence if you don't know where it's going to go yet? Because that's sort of a math thing, right? Of how much fence am I going to need and that kind of stuff. So it just kind of shows you that people are like, we need fencing and some kind of water thing, maybe not. And there's probably like this double vestibule that my friend told me about. But the access and putting it in there and hooking it up to something that can ensure a baseline of safety and operations and people understanding what's happening at the dog park. So with your stuff and with any system that's sort of counting who's going in, then when is our traffic coming in, when is it empty, because then you can schedule your mowing and your maintenance and your poop pickup and all that kind of stuff when people are not there at max levels.
Which is huge, right? Because,
Mhm.
yeah, like hear you loud and clear about the sign, and that's, BarkPass has, the ability to digitally sign waivers and all of that, so you have all of that electronically. But you're right about the construction of the park because, uh, do you have electricity out there? Do you need a solar lock? Do you need, is there water out there? What's the infrastructure like? And to choose the best access control system. And then the more fancy you will your access control, and we don't always advocate for fancy. Cheap and cheerful is sometimes the right decision. But depending on your system, if you have a more robust access control system, you know who is in and outside of the park at all times. That, after, let's say, a year's time, you have an incredible amount of data. And to your point, you can do things like plan turf replacement, plan all the maintenance and all of that.
Hello?
Very significant.
Hey,
I'm gonna shoot out and drop the bread off.
I am home today.
Yeah, I
Hey,
know.
Kim, can
Oh,
you
okay.
unmute your microphone?
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Dave. Bye.
Here we go. All right.
We good?
So yeah, I totally agree with you on that because one of the issues is if you think about let's say that Brian, let's say that we decide we're going to open a spray ground, right? Or a pool, like a little pool area with some spray things, right? So you go and you do all of that. So when I was younger, I was a lifeguard. So at the pool, my friend Gary was in maintenance. I was a guard and we had all these people and there were, check-ins on how much chlorine is in the pool. You had readings that you had to take and those were all mandated and, very, very formalized. So, you take care of it. So people come in, they swim and then they leave. Can you imagine a pool that you send your family to where they're like, by the way, we're going to need you to check the pH. The chemicals are back there. We need you to scrub down the stuff and maybe empty the trash cans. No one is going to join that pool, right? And it would be ridiculous to say that. And I'm not going to ask like my kids to go get the chlorine out of the maintenance shed and add a little because, it's low. But we do that with dog parks. We're like, we'll build it for you, but you have to maintain it. We'll build it for you, but we're going to allow things to overflow in terms of waste management. We're going to not monitor things that way that we would have for a different kind of recreational experience,
Yeah,
even though we have all this information.
Yeah,
What's that?
Dog parks are multi-million-dollar investments that are either coming right out of city budgets, right? So everybody's tax dollars, or they're funded by volunteer groups or what have you, right? So you have a very engaged community who have driven a lot
Yeah.
of fundraising.
And when you say maintenance, it's a really wide spectrum too, right? Like, so two of my favorite dog parks, there's one in Lake George, New York, that's a private park for Dave King, had been RVing his whole life with his family. And they had people that were leaving to go home because their dogs, need to be out of the can that they're traveling in, right? So they're like, well, maybe we'll build one. So they built this dog park. It's in the Adirondack Mountains. They have their own staff of maintenance, so everything is pristine anyway. So it had real turf, it had faux turf, they had a Zamboni kind of thingy just to clean the turf grass. I mean, it was amazing how much was put into this thing. Beautiful chalet kind of thing. It was a spectacular experience, right? Within the little chalet next to the dog park, which was kind of self-contained within their fencing, which was all bougie and everything, there were bathrooms that are nicer than most people's in their homes. They had like this dog wash station with a little ramp. They had vending machines with stuff for your dog and stuff for the humans. So, you know, sort of everything that you could think of was taken care of. And I fell in love with it. It was a rainy day and there was a bulldog playing there while we were talking. So there wasn't a lot of rambunctious play going on, but I was mesmerized by this, right? And I thought this is always going to be my favorite dog park. So then I'm up the other side of the country in Redmond, Washington. And I don't know if anybody here has been to, there's a dog park it's called Marymoor Dog Park. And it is, I'm a nature girl. So, oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. But it's like everything that you would say to someone that you should not do at a dog park, right? So we were playing with a Leonberger, which is a massive dog, that was playing with a Boston Terrier, which is a little dog, right? And that would be like, no, that dog should be in the big dog area. Your dog should be in the little dog area. Everybody had treats with them. People had chuckets whipping balls down this, huge area, dogs running everywhere, toys, treats, toddlers, strollers, no fencing, right? I mean, and nothing. The dogs were so good. The humans, it was like they were born already good dog parents, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? It was magical also, but in a completely different vibe. And it was perfect for a Pacific Northwest experience. And Dave's experience is perfect for a private, really well run, high impact, high quality private experience with RVing, right? But they're completely different in the way they were built, what was spent, the role of volunteers, no role in Lake George, right? Because it's all private and it's very, set up that way. Where you have Redmond, very reliant on, having people not just say, I'll help because I have a dog and I want them to be able to be here, but also, is it maintained in a way that is sustainable for generations of people to come there? Because that was like 42-acre linear along a slow moving stream. You've got people cruising by on stand-up paddle boards, talking with the dogs from across the stream, and then put-ins like you would have for kayaking for the dogs to go in and play. There was a dog named Sophie that was adorable there that was, I think it was her 5th try to actually go into the water because she would come and like put her foot in, right? But you have to have an environment where a dog feels safe taking chances with their own autonomy in play. That's the whole magic of having off-leash play anyway.
I
So
love
you have
that
to
you
figure
talk
out
about
how
this.
you do that.
I
What's
love that
that?
you talk I love that you talk about sustainability because that's what we want to do is create self-sustaining dog parks, and it is really interesting to learn about what all the different how different dog parks take that approach to sustainability.
Yeah.
For one of these days, I want to get a call together just to brainstorm or share all the ideas that we have that we've learned from our clients across the country. But we have a client in California that put 6 dog washing stations in their park, and they generate $200,000 of revenue every year from those 6 dog washing stations, which I just think is
Exactly.
fascinating, right? But that's a
Yeah.
recurring revenue source that goes right back to create.
Yeah.
Beth, when
Yeah.
you talk about pet-friendly communities, right?
Yeah.
Having a sustainable revenue source so that you can continue to invest in it is what's going to, I think, how BarkPass could help you and your clients achieve your goal, right? Of pet-friendly communities.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. And if you look at this slide, this kind of reinforces what you're talking about, is that I've seen the dog wash stations, right? Like the one at Marymoor is like a caboose looking thing with stalls, and it's all like it's like a, where you drive in for a car wash, right? So you put your dog in there. But I think what happens, and I was guilty of this when I was in Parks and Rec, where you're like, it would be really cool is if we did this. Like, here's a program. And it's like, oh, this will be amazing for the users and this will be so easy to whatever. But just the dog wash station, right? Now you're talking about vendors, licensing. Are you going to inspect the stuff? Are you having chemicals on site? Where are you getting the water? Are we going to protect that? And then as people are paying for that, what's the security for the users? What's the security for the money that's being either handed across, or are they Stripe only? So we forget that there's this whole operations side over here. We forget that there's law enforcement over here. And then we forget that if you have a 42-acre area where there are all these people and there's really no telling, that one was, there was no way I could have paired, like, if this dog goes with this person, because they were just running around having fun. So it's not a controlled environment, right? Very easy place that you could just go with your dog and leave him there if you didn't want him anymore.
So
And
I have
people do that a lot.
question for you on the dog park or on the dog wash piece. So I know that you would never just say, yes, I'm a proponent, or no, I'm not. But have you developed anything that says if you're going to have a third party vendor on site at the dog park, or you're going to have a dog washing station, do you have a checklist or playbook or anything that somebody should follow, or a resource?
They should. Yeah, they absolutely should. I've done that for people specific to their community. So some people that I've worked with, it's a very um, like loose, just kind of fly by the seat of your pants kind of vibe, right? Other people are very, very, accredited agencies in Park and Rec. They're going to have more things documented. They're going to have more processes put on paper and all that kind of thing. But taking the time to put those pieces in order will save you a lot of headaches down the road, right? So having an understanding of when you put this in, here's how we're going to handle this. So I always tell people, and this is just from my PR background, you have got to catastrophize everything that you're doing. And with AI, it makes it really easy. Just put in all the detail about your park, and then you can create skills that will say, this is how you should evaluate this operation, how it's doing. These are the user-based people, and upload those audience intel pieces and the archetypes, because then it allows you to say, okay, based on your user group and how it's being maintained, not just operationally, but how are we maintaining in the sense of, are we gonna be able to make money from this thing, right? Because people have a tendency to look at Parks and Rec and not think about revenue streams. They don't think about having that mindset of what could we develop that would create a flow of revenue so we don't have to be dependent all the time on hitting up our volunteers. Because
Yeah.
I've been to so many presentations where people are like, we're going to do this presentation. We're going to tell them, we'll take care of this. If you just give us a dog park, we promise we'll do this. We promise we'll do that. And we'll promise to, the list. If you can come to that meeting with an expectation of how each one of those things could impact all of the different departments, and then just have a plan in place so that
Yeah.
you can not be taken off guard. Because just like with that grand opening, we were not anticipating a bite, right? But it could have gotten pretty ugly, right? Imagine if the person would have immediately started arguing with the other dog owner. That could have come to blows. They could be suing each other. So there's a lot of de-escalation, but we don't train for that either. Are you training people for uncomfortable conversations? Because if you've been around dog people, you know that they have very strong opinions and they're never wrong.
Yeah, all right. I just, one small point here, just on the animal control piece, because I think they sometimes get overlooked. And I think it's an important piece for any pet lover or animal lover. One of the things we made sure when we developed BarkPass is that it's 100% mobile friendly. So that really helps out with pet reunification, right? If the pet's lost, whether they're a pet licensing client or a dog park client,
Mhm.
they are animal control is able to pull up BarkPass, scan the pass, and find out who the pet parent is. We can reduce that reunification cycle. So no trip to the shelter at all, right? Let's skip that stage and just get them right into their home. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are so many things that can go wrong just having a pet in general, but that's a really scary one, right? Like, what if they're missing? I mean, we just had the 4th of July, and you see that's where a lot of dogs go missing because of the explosions of fireworks and things like that. And it's easy to demonize and say some awful person just left this dog in the dog park to fend for themselves, especially in the heat that we have, right? But what if it was a person that was like, I have to get to work and I'm dropping my kid off at school. I came across this dog. I can't get a hold of anybody. I'll put it in here. I know it's fenced, it's grassy, it's made for dogs. So instead of assuming the worst about someone who is trying to help out with that situation, it helps us um, sort of shut that door and keep moving with our life. But we need to think deeper about, do we know who's coming in using this? Do we know how they're using it? Do we know when they're coming? Do we know if the dogs are vaccinated? Do we know if they understand the rules? One of the interesting things that I saw was like in Seattle, when I visited that area, I went to the downtown zone and I had some meetings with, project management and economic development and tourism and transportation. But in between, there was this window of time where I could like zip out and check it out because there were a bunch of dog parks that were reported to be just in the downtown area. They were maybe 3.5 foot chicken wire with stakes and a zip tied sign that said, please pick up your dog. That's it. But there were 33 of them just in the downtown area of Seattle because they looked at their user base. These are people that don't have access to grassy areas and yards and things like that. It's a dense population, right? And so it worked perfectly because those people are coming out, go to the potty, take you back in, give you a little bit of love and a treat, and I'll see you after work kind of thing. That's a different experience than going to like Marymore when it's going to be, an hour long or 2 hour long adventure with your dog where they're going to be wet and dirty and whatever, right? That's a totally different use case scenario. But we have a tendency to want to have the same solution, the same build plan, the same operations, the same use of technology, thinking that it's going to be a cookie cutter and you can use it anywhere,
So
and it really doesn't work that way.
with regards to the accountability loop that we have up here, I'm particularly curious in um, what you think of like your experiences around permitted dog parks. So, and BarkPass is bread and butter, if you will, our permitted dog parks. So don't skew it towards me at all. But what in terms of um, making sure that vaccinations are in file and all of that? I would love to hear your 2 cents.
I don't think that this gets enough play, honestly.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that businesses put out the little dog bowl of water to let people know that they're dog friendly, but there's not enough money that you could pay me to have my dog drink out of that bowl, right? Because I don't know who or what is in that bowl, what's going on in there. And that's just, like a 6 foot circle. Now you're talking about an acre or whatever of land where a dog that hasn't been vaccinated, that maybe has parasites on them, they could have something that's extremely contagious. And it's tough. You can't like sterilize a grassy area. You can't just get rid of it, right? And if you have no limitations on who can just come in and use that space, then you're inviting in dogs of all levels in terms of their age, in terms of their immune system, where they came from, how they manage their vaccinations. I know some people do more of a titering, right? So they don't want to have all the vaccination within the dog's body at that time. But there's no really hard, fast way to know, are they immune or are they not immune, right? So if you're going to use the dog park, you absolutely should, your dog should be in peak health if they're coming to the dog park.
I
And
don't
you
know.
should understand that you go in there, if they have a compromised immune system, you're taking them into a public space with dogs from multiple areas of varying levels of health. So having the permit and gathering that information, it doesn't just protect you in terms of, liability and having, recourse on if something happens, but it also makes a big statement. Like if I know that I'm taking my dog to a play space and you're asking me all these tough questions about their health, about um, just their characteristics in terms of how they're going to experience that space, right? That lets me know that you care about that. That lets me know that you're checking on it. That lets me know that they're not just letting anybody in here, right? That's a different value proposition. Now, it may not be doable for all scenarios, but I think that that's something that people should be leaning into because we need to have more control over this. The fact that you can just put them up with some promises from some community members and a little slush fund, or maybe a donor came in, that's not a sustainable business practice.
I don't know if Steve Zeidman is on the call right now or if he's on mute. But Steve, didn't you recently write a blog on some of the health issues affecting dog parks these days? If you're not there, I'll move on.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, it was more than a few months ago, but just about like the parasites and a lot of the disease transmission that seems to follow dog parks. Yeah, it was a few months back. Trying to remember the details of it, but it's been a while ago. But it's in there. We could find the link and send it.
Okay. Fair enough. Sorry.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting, Brian. I don't know if you guys can pull together. I'm happy to send you some links and additional information if you want to send stuff to people that were listening, or that they could let you know, hey, can I have some feedback on that? To let them know like what to look for, not just signs like 4x6 signs saying to do something, but what are the signs of the other dogs in that area, right? How are they treating you as far as, am I allowed to come in with my dog? We need to stop seeing it as, you can't ask me that, or, my dog's healthy. How dare you ask me, right? We have this sort of indignation, right? It's like, oh, you asked me a question, you're questioning my ability to be a good dog parent. But let's be real, dog parents are not all the same. They have varying degrees of income and education and access to veterinary care and access to medications. And it's expensive to own a dog, right? So you're talking about a little more responsibility, potentially a little more load at a time when we're all kind of struggling with, where our financial situation is. So it can be a bad thing in the sense that it's a barrier to entry, just like anything else, like you have to pay to play. But at the same time, if I know my dog's going to be safer in there, that's,
if I
that
may
would be
share another
willing.
example of a client that's doing something very progressive that just absolutely warms my heart. So if you think of a permitted dog park model, and by the way, that the concept of permitted dog park model is very, very popular in the Midwest. Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, like they cannot fathom the idea of having a dog park that's just everybody enters willy-nilly. So it's interesting to think about how they vary regionally. But a lot of, and I absolutely subscribe to this, we want to make sure that dog parks or a permit is not a barrier, especially if there's a fee, to any pet loving dog parent or pet parent, right? So the state of Hawaii is we're going to be onboarding them as a new client soon, and in BarkPass you upload your vaccination records and all of that good stuff to prove that your dog's healthy. They are putting together what I call a scholarship program, and if any resident uploads anything that and they're very loose on what that documentation is, but any documentation that shows that they're on public assistance, the dog park membership is free and the pass is granted automatically, which I think is just awesome because it removes that barrier for lower income folks. And this also makes a lot of sense in Hawaii, right? With a very indigenous population and maybe some different cultural attitudes towards dogs. But I just thought it was such a forward thinking, honestly kind way to approach it. And like I could tear up over it. I think
I do.
yeah.
I hear you on that. It's just when you look at the impact of dogs on our lives, just not even just dog parks, but dogs in general. All right. So we know they did all these studies about like, do you have a release of serotonin when you're around a dog? Yeah, they found that out. Do you have it in terms of lowering your blood pressure? Yeah. Do you live longer? Yeah, you do. Are you more likely to not need to be on any kind of antidepressant or anti-anxiety thing? Can they intervene with that? Yes, they can. Then we find out that it goes so far that I can show you a picture of a dog and you have those reactions, right? So they don't even have to be in the room with you. So now we're saying when we put these barriers in front of people, that all of these health benefits, all of these safety side effects, all of these things that garner you better results in terms of responsible dog ownership, welcoming infrastructure, inclusivity, whatever it is that is important to you, that's the stuff that's rolled up in what it's like to have a dog in your life. So now you're saying, but only if you have money.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's ridiculous because people who don't have that much money they're like bigger candidates of need for that intervention of having dogs in their lives, right? But we give them the opposite.
Yeah, running a permitted dog park does not need to be a barrier for entry at all. If you
Yeah.
give it thought. Yeah. Cheers to that.
Yeah. And I think, when you look at the role of dogs in our lives, but also why do we make decisions, what's important to us, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting right now, if you watch, there's all kinds of news coverage about laws being changed, new policies being stood up about dogs, right? And I was like, because we
Ownership of
were,
dogs, right? Like is this where you're going? Like it's interesting. Like are dogs a member of the family or is dog still a product? Or
well, interesting. Rich Rolish asked me to write up some stuff for the National Recreation and Park Association, has like a trends analysis thing. So I gave him some material a few years ago, and they actually put in there that maybe it's time to think of dogs as taxpayers and build accordingly. And I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, right, because that's that recognition of it being a family member, right? So it still is pretty prickly. I remember I talked to this awesome guy, Tiki Tommy Nigman, and he and Dolores and Martha, not making it up, they're out in Berkeley, California at Alone Park, and there was like a section that was a park, and then behind that there was sort of like a scrubby kind of part of the park, and then behind that there was like a transportation area where they were doing construction on a highway. So, nice park, and then probably not. So they're standing there, and that ends up being the first official dog park anywhere. So I'm like, I got to talk to this guy, right? I want to talk to this guy. I'm like, Tommy. So we end up connecting over the phone, and I was like, you have to tell me the story. Like, what was it like the moment that you guys were like, let's create a dog park and he goes, well, I was standing there with Martha and Doris, and here's me. Yeah. And he goes, and Martha said to Doris, um, we should have a park for dogs. And I'm like, that's it? Like, I'm like waiting. So I do a little digging, and he was just being modest and quiet about it. But the same way that they got that dog park is the same way that we're getting them now, which is people push, they get irritated that you're saying no, but dog people can be tenacious. So they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. They told them they could have it at that first park. Then they're like, well, actually, we're going to put you back here. And then they actually put them in the section where they were parking cars for construction instead. So it's like, let me give you the least valuable property in terms of what that experience is like. Let's not even talk about the number of hazards that were probably in that area because it was a construction drop zone, right? It's kind of the same thing that we do now, right? You go to commission, you have your plan, you make your speeches, you've got your package, and you're like, what do you think? And they're like, well, we do have some property that's basically useless. Sure, you can have it, but we're not going to pay for anything, right? And you guys are gonna have to volunteer to like pick up all the poop and mow it, and like that's very common to have happen. And
Yeah.
we're like, wait a second, this is a relationship between humans and dogs in a way that brings people into nature, helps them understand what sustainability means. And you brought up the West Coast, perfect example of there are shore bird populations that can be negatively impacted by dogs being around, right? Those are smart conversations to have. You shouldn't be tearing down one habitat to allow enrichment in the other.
Agreed.
That's why we need to be bigger thinking on where could this go? Are we planning for that open space? And to your point, once it's a little more controlled, it gives people an understanding that the infrastructure is here, they have policies in place, they've got their act together, right? I feel comfortable being in that. And after talking with that many people, it makes a big difference.
Colorado is really interesting here because they have what they call the sight and sound program. So Colorado has
Yeah.
off leash dog trails that are thousands and thousands of miles big, right? Long, and they are off leash.
Yeah.
And there are no fences because they know that the fences would, dog fences would disrupt other habitats, to your point. So one of the things that they have put in is what they call sight and sound. So before you can get the permit to take your dog on the off leash trails, you have to go through a little online course, because they are passionate about the human dog bond as well as the other wildlife. Beth, I think we're coming up on time, so I want to make sure that there's room for Q&A. So
Yes.
if there's any other points that you want to make, please do. But I want to open it up for people as well, because I think the best ideas come from a good argument, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see what people have to say. I'd love to do that.
See if I can flip my screen here, guys. Anybody? Steve Zeidman, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I see a hand up here. Oh, that's Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. So a lot of interesting stuff. And of course, as an animal lover and having a company in the pet space, thanks for putting this on. I thought it was really informative. I actually live in the UK. And
Oh.
Beth, I know it's probably a big ask to see if you've done any research here, but I just want to kind of add a couple of my 2 cents from the perspective here is that being Canadian, growing up with dogs, we weren't allowed to bring the dog. Like, okay, let's not. It's not quite apples to apples. We don't have a ton of pubs in Canada. So I live in an area. There's about 12 pubs in a radius of like 2 miles. Everybody brings their dog to the pub.
Wow.
So the thing, I guess, for me is that, as a quick aside, I know all the dogs' names, but I don't know the human names. So I'm like, hey, Frankie, hi, Frankie's mom. Anyway, so they don't have to my knowledge, because right now, sadly, our cat passed away recently, so we don't have a dog at the moment. We're looking to foster one. But the dog parks here, it's very informal, and they don't really seem to have any kind of fancy. I'm just thinking of one that's maybe about a kilometer away from me. It's a really big open space. They do have a gate, and everyone's so respectful. And dogs are off lead here all the time. I'm walking down the street to go to the tube or grab the bus or just walking somewhere, and dogs are coming up to me. I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? So
Right.
it's just a different cultural thing. So I'm just more thinking out loud with respect to, like, I'm not sure, I don't have the answer, but it would be interesting to know how people would react to having something like BarkPass here. It's just because, again, everyone has a dog there. I never see any kind of incidents at the dog park. But anyway, just a little 2 cents, not really a question, but I guess my indirect question is, you probably haven't had time or resource to do any kind of research here with respect to setting up like a formal dog park and that kind of thing. But just again, observation wise, is that there's generally, an open space, and there seems to be dogs running around. So I don't even know sometimes, because it's not formally marked, if it's a dog park, but everyone
Cheryl,
kind of seems to accept. Yeah.
what's your business, Cheryl, before Beth answers?
Oh yeah. I have a donation platform for rescue animals. So I raise money to help rescues get animals off of the euthanasia list.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
So I think
If-
Cheryl needs to tell us the URL for that business so we can support that.
Oh, I don't want
Is
to. I
it?
don't want to poach what you guys are doing.
No,
So
no,
I'm
no.
happy to.
I think it's cool. Like, is it petpardon.org?
It's it's pet-pardon.com, but I also own petpardon.org as well, so it'll redirect. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you for that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for doing that. Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring that up, because I have done a lot of stuff with people, and honestly, it was because of COVID, right? We had more connection with people in other parts of the world, so I was able to connect with people from different countries and really dive into what's happening there. And is interesting because, like, if you look at the UK, like, attitudes about breed discrimination are very different there than they
Yeah,
are
we
in the
have the
States.
the Dangerous Dog Act has been here since, like, I think 1991, and there's that
Yeah,
whole XL bully thing last year that Rishi. I don't even want to
yeah,
get into that because that's just
yeah,
heartbreaking.
yeah.
But
That's a
yeah,
whole different thing.
yeah,
But yeah, you're right.
yeah.
It is when I talk about it's different in, like, Brian was just saying, like, in Iowa, they're all about this, but over here they're not, right? I did a project and they're like, absolutely no one can be restricted in any way, because that's the vibe of that town. When I looked at stuff in Italy, it's very like, here's a bocce ball, the next block over, it's a dog park. Then there's bocce, and then there's a dog park. And it's like all the dogs are just like full bred, very bougie experience. And then you have another one where it's just out in the country, and it's the same thing that we have with parks. It's like, why would somebody want to pay taxes to maintain parkland when they live in a park-like setting on their farm, right? So
Right.
there's that context. The same thing happens with dog parks, in the sense that, what's your culture like? When I was in Little Italy in San Diego, that's the first time that I recognized, this is back to dog body language, right? I I sort of saw something in the faces of the dogs that it was like, oh, the people understand how to be dog friendly, and so do the dogs, right? They kind of have more opportunity to socialize because they're always welcome everywhere, right? If you live in a
Yep.
town where the dogs are allowed to go everywhere, that by definition means that those dogs are better socialized, right? So then when you have the like the Bully XL thing come in, and you're kind of where we were a few years ago in terms of bully breeds in the States, right? You have some very bad things happen, some bad actors that are populating that niche. And
Yeah.
so there was something that had to be done. Do we want to say all dogs that look like this should be put down? And we should be rewarding people for turning those dogs in? They were actually paying hundreds of
Oh,
dollars to bring them in, right? So
yeah.
that's an outcome of us not looking at it like it's a problem we need to address, that it's somebody else's problem. But you realize when you get into the dog space and you're living in an area where you are, where there are so many opportunities to have that experience, that brings people together, right? The point that you had about like when I moved to my new place, I, on my phone, have a list of all the dogs that I pass when I walk around and do my walking. I have no idea who the people are.
I spend several pounds a month on dog treats, and some of the dogs, when they come up to me, I'm like, "Oh God, I don't have a dog treat on me. I have to cross the
I
street."
know.
Like,
Yeah, because then they look at the dogs, look at you
yeah,
like, lady,
the dogs are like,
hello,
"Really?" Yeah,
I need a
yeah,
Marcy's Pet Kitchen treat right now, right?
yep,
So, but yeah, you're right.
exactly.
I think that's it's almost like we need to put ourselves out of business a little bit, right? Like when we get to a point where we don't have to monitor that, when we get to a point where dogs know what to do, when we get to a point where humans can talk to each other about the dog relationship and the human relationship without suing each other or screaming at each other or calling the city and saying, la, 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 and then the city is like, oh, please don't ask me about another dog park, right? We are
Yep.
the reason that they are not good. We are the reason that they are not running toward dog friendliness. Every time you don't pick up a piece of poop off of your dog's, right? Pick it up, even if it's a teeny tiny thing, right? That's an expression of I care about my community, even if it's a little piece of poop, right? Every poop that you leave on the sidewalk or in the grass or on somebody else's lawn, that's another person that's going to be like, I don't know about this whole dog friendly thing, right? But we don't approach it that way. So the dog park situation, when you talked about like the off leash, no fencing, when I was
Hmm.
in like the Portland area, they would have a like a 3 or 4 foot post in the ground, and it's called Oreo board, where it's like routed in, and it would just say no dogs this side and then dogs off leash. And it was literally a post like a 4x4 in the ground. That's it. And it was faded, like no one's going to see it, but the people there know the area, they know what they're supposed to do, and they respect it because they know that it is, in many communities, it's a privilege to have that, right? It's not a given. Then you go to other
Yep.
communities and it's like not even a conversation. It's just an assumption that that's available to them.
All right, my friend, I think we're at time. Beth, thank you. And I absolutely call you my friend. Thank you for making me better. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're gonna let y'all go. Beth, forgive me, I don't know your email off the top of my head. I got too much gray
Oh,
hair. Mine is brian@barkpass.com. If you want to send anything or anything to Beth, if you can't find us, we'll get it to her. But again, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you
thank you
guys.
guys.
It's
And
been great.
tell your dogs I said hi.
Bye. Thanks.